Hello, Internet. My name is Brenanarchy. Welcome back to Gregtech New Horizons. Last episode, we made a big push to LV. We upgraded several of our machines to high-pressure steam. We got a new macerator done. And of course, we made our first basic steam turbine, as well as a small stack of LV circuits. Since then, I've taken a little bit of time, done some mining, filled up on materials again. You can see we've got 20, 30 stacks of most of the common metals, obviously much less gold and silver. I also ended up making a second steam oven off camera, just because processing all my ores was taking longer than I wanted. So today, we are jumping right in where we left off pretty much. Obviously, there's still a lot of stuff we can do in this Steam Age tab as far as some various QLL things, but also, storage upgrades, things like that. We will get into those sort of as I need them, but they're all pretty ancillary and they can all be completed as we get further into the LV age. The one thing I do want to do is something we talked about last time, which is I want to get the hazmat suit unlocked, because every time I go down to steel processing, I get slowness, and it's just annoying more than anything else. So we can take a couple of rubber bars, and how do I turn these into rubber sheets again? I've already forgotten. Is it an alloy smelter with a mold? Is that the way we do it? Or do they go into a compressor? It's not well, no, it'll be under alloy smelter molding. Yeah. Yeah. Alloy smelter with a mold. That's what I thought. All right, this looks like it's moving pretty fast, so we'll have the rubber sheets for that quest in no time. While those are running, let's look at some of the other stuff we want to do today. My big goals, now that we have this first steam turbine, are the machines that make constructing other machines easier. There's a lot to do in LV, as you can see here, but the initial things that we want to take care of are some of these processing machines. The wire mill is huge. It's like a 3x improvement in our wire making efficiency compared to without it. So it's one of the first ones we want to jump on. We also want to be thinking about a bending machine. We want to be thinking about a lathe. We probably want to be thinking about a saw, but we don't have to think about it right away. Ultimately, our goal in low voltage is getting ourselves to the EBF, the electric blast furnace. That's going to be in here somewhere. Yeah. To get to the EBF, we have to spend some time in the Twilight Forest dimension, because that's where we get nickel. There is a quest that explains that. I don't remember where it is right now. And to get into the Twilight Forest dimension, if we find basic thaumaturgy... Yeah, getting into the Twilight Forest dimension requires these portal generators, and the portal generator is ultimately made in an assembler, and the assembler is made from kind of all the stuff that you need to make all the other LV machines. So this is why we want to go through, we want to get all of our common machines done, and then things like conveyors and robot arms and pistons and motors are going to be a lot cheaper sort of all the way up the chain to the really complex machines like the assembler, like the EBF, etc. So for today, for right now, what that means is wire mill first, and then probably pistons into the bending machine into the lathe. And we'll see where that takes us as far as today's episode. And if we still have some time, we can always find some more things to push into. 64 rubber sheets is enough for this quest. We can submit those. claim our hazmat suit. And with the hazmat suit, if I trade it off, there we go. You can see it. Here, let me show this correctly. I was working on this weeks ago. I thought I would get to the hazmat suit a lot sooner. I figured the Wrath of Khan uniform deserved a Wrath of Khan engineering suit for the hazmat suit. So the next thing is the wire mill. This is just another machine hull. This is a few electric motors and some tin cable. If we say we want to add it here, we can see it wants... Yeah, some of these things do get... That's weird that that's the rubber recipe that it chose. I probably don't actually want a favorited rubber recipe at all. Yeah, I just see that I want rubber sheets because our best way of making rubber sheets is going to be changing pretty rapidly as we get through LV. We will get better rubber, so we're just going to leave this here for now. And then 4 electric motors, which, again, I think I have separate because eventually we're going to be making them in, like, other setups. But for now, I can go ahead and just say 4 of those here, and we'll get an idea of what we need for that. And yeah, the cost of these motors, the cost of the cables that we need for the wire mill. This is why the wire mill is the first thing we do, because all of these, as I said, get 3 times cheaper. But let's grab everything we need for this and jump right into it. Do I have some copper plate? I do. Here, let's see what we need here. Just some redstone, and here, just the motors, which just needs the redstone. All right, no problem. So 4 more motors, and then basic wire mill. And then along with that basic wire mill, I do want to make a couple more tin cables, just so I have a couple. Are we out of, yeah, we're out of rubber sheets. That's okay. Just 1 is honestly enough for now. Our initial setup with these is going to be a little rough, a little funky. I just want to get everything kind of to a space where I can use the machines, and I care less about close efficiency and being able to do things in bulk. That's the structural concrete. That should be in here. Yes, I think it's that concrete. Hopefully this is the right kind to fill in this floor. Yes, it is. So let's go ahead and put a steam turbine down, which is collecting steam. Excellent. And then if we put down a basic wire mill here, wire in between them, and we use a wire cutter just like we've used the wrench to turn on the connection, we should have... We should have a wire mill, and I think this will just work if I want to throw a stack of copper in and set it to circuit number 1. I think this is just going to make, yep, a bunch of copper wires, and you can see this is now 1 ingot to 2 wires, whereas before it was 3 ingots to 2 wires. So, huge improvement. Awesome that that is done. Obviously, I'm going to have to run the same thing with tin wire, and I'm also going to have to get eventually fine copper wire. We don't need fine copper wire for the motors, but we do need it when we run out of electronic circuits. The next machine that I want to look at is the bending machine. This gets us 1-to-1 plates instead of 3-to-2. So that's a nice little investment. For that, it wants us to make our first LV piston. And the bender itself actually needs 2 of those, so we'll make 2 of them. We can see that we're also going to need a total of 4 motors again. And of course, that means rods, magnetic iron rods, which use redstone, which actually, maybe we want to just grab the polarizer. Yeah, this has no motors in it, nothing weird. It does have some 2x wires, which is unusual. But other than that, yeah, I think we can get the polarizer set up first, and that just saves us the redstone that we need for magnetic iron. And then we can remove magnetic iron from our favorites list, and it's just sort of a component that we get that we make however we're going to make it. So let's get the polarizer done then. That does mean we need to get a few of these 2x tin wires, just because those are a weird custom thing. And then a couple of tin cables. So let's get tin into the machine, rather than just the copper that's running through here now. We'll use circuit number 2 to get the 4 2x wires that we need. And then once those are done, we'll switch over to 1x, and I'll just make a bunch of tin wires at 1x. And we can just let those wires at 1x run for a little while. Let's actually run one more copper through, just so I have a multiple of 4. I don't know if it really matters, but it'll look nice. And then start running the tin through. We can unfavorite that copper wire recipe for motors. Is there anything else in here that I should unfavorite? The tin wire recipe as well. Basically any place that we're still making wires with snips, I want unfavorited, because what I don't want to have happen is that I run out of wire and then it gets made in an inefficient way, just like automatically, because I'm not paying attention. That would be bad. So we want to make sure that each of these steps, we've removed whatever inefficient recipes we had, and we're only using the most efficient options we've got at the moment. And then that will feed finally into the bending machine. Okay. We should have enough tin to start. Yeah. So we should be able to craft... Oh, we're missing rubber sheets. I probably only made, like, exactly as many as I needed, huh? Let's just throw a whole stack of rubber into rubber sheets again. Because, of course, I just turned a bunch of them in for a quest. So, there we go. That's our polarizer. And we are going to need... Here, let me make one more tin cable. We are going to have to be careful initially as we run these machines because, like, depending on how much EU per tick they use, will run out. This machine, I think, can only supply 1 EU a tick. So, like, the 1 amp cables are fine. But we don't want things to run out of power. But since both of these are fairly low power, like 4 EU a tick, and this one will be a little bit lower as well, we can probably get away with running both of those simultaneously. But other machines we're going to have a harder time with. So I'm just going to do half a stack of... actually, for now, I'm going to do these as I need them because we're going to get better ways to make iron rods really soon. So I don't want to make a whole stack of iron rods by filing them. Yeah, 16 EU a tick plus 4 EU a tick is like 20 EU a tick. That is also one of the worst sounds. 4 motors, more steel. And that's because the pistons themselves want steel rods. Yes. And yeah, there's also rods in the small steel gears. Can we do these a better way yet? It seems like no. We can't use the gear molds. We either need an extruder that's MV at extruding. Fluid solidifier, if we can get molten steel, that's also MV. Okay, so no, not until MV. All right, 2 motors plus 2 pistons plus a couple of circuits. We are apparently missing a couple of steel plates, which I guess we're going to have to make our last inefficient steel plates because we're about to have the better machine for it. All right, basic bending machine. And again, I want to throw together some more cable because we are going to need to get this hooked up over here. Go there. There's our bending machine. And once again, hook it up with the wire cutter. This is going to give us 1-to-1 plates now instead of our previous 3-to-2. The last really basic machine for improving our resources is the lathe. The lathe gives us better yields for bolts and screws. And I believe, I'm not sure if it gives us better direct rods. I don't think it necessarily does. Yeah, there's still 1 ingot to 1 rod. It does give us a little bit of dust though in return. But it's really the better bolt and screw recipes that we're looking for with the lathe than the rod recipes. But this is pretty much the same as everything else we've been making. We need that's not what I meant to do. We need a piston. We need a couple of motors. And it should all go pretty well. I need to actually collect the magnetized rods that I made. Oh, yeah. Nope. I need to actually make more rods to magnetize. That's the real. And I'll batch craft a bunch of these when I have time to. Once we have the lathe, probably. Now, do we have everything we need? For the motors, yes. That still wants some steel ingots. Yeah, just for rods. And we do still want... Yeah, for this craft, at least, we want to craft the rods. This is the last time we want to craft the rods, but we'll do it. And then here, we've got everything we need. And I need 1 more... Oh, and it got used out of my inventory. Do we have a little more rubber, or did that all get used up? It all got used up. I need 1 more rubber plate for 1 more... We're going through this rubber fast. We're going to have to make more rubber real soon. But I need 1 more rubber plate for 1 more cable. We'll get that hooked up here and here. That's not what I meant to do. There we go. Now we have a lathe, and now we can remove rods from our favorites, and we'll make rods from the lathe as we need them. So those 4 machines are the important ones, I guess, to really getting started. With all of them running off of just one steam turbine, obviously we can't run all of them all at once. It would be nice to get them on like a battery buffer or something like that, so that even if I do still just keep the one steam turbine, we can run them off of, still run a couple of them simultaneously. But I'm not sure how far out battery buffers are. I suspect the answer is, I mean, realistically, lead. And lead is Twilight Forest. So I think that's where we're at, waiting for batteries to run machines. So I think the next thing to do then, looking at kind of where we're at and what we can push towards, if we kind of treat everything sort of over here, certainly everything behind batteries is really gated behind the Twilight Forest. Realistically, aluminum up here is gated behind the Twilight Forest. I think some of these things down here are not the chemical processing stuff, but I think starting to get into like oil processing deserves its own episode. MV circuits and the first of those deserve their own episode, unless I need an MV circuit for the assembler, which I don't. It takes LV circuits. Oh, it's the other way around. Yeah. We need the assembler before we can push into the MV circuit stuff. So all that being said, I think the thing to do is to get our assembler built. It's to get the conveyor modules that we need done. It's to get the first couple of robot arms that I need done. And it's to push them into making our first assembler. Then again, if we are basically out of rubber, we can get more efficient rubber production. And maybe that's what we should be thinking about doing. Get the extractor, although each of these are also going to need more cables, more things like that. That is also just rubber. And if I'm going to have to do another big batch of rubber anyway, then just doing the assembler is fine, as long as I save enough rubber for the chemical processing. So I think I'm going to go for the assembler today first. Let's see how much rubber we can get. Maybe that's the first question is like, how much slime do I have? How much rubber can we get out of it? 17 rubber sheets was the answer to how many we could make, although I think a couple of these were already sitting in this output chest, so maybe 15 was actually how many we made. That does mean that I want to prioritize the basic chemical reactor first. The basic chemical reactor is going to give us way better rubber sheets. Not only does it get us 1-to-1 rubber instead of 2-to-1 rubber sheets, making an ingot of molten rubber takes 1/3 as much raw rubber and 1/9 as much sulfur. So it's just wildly more efficient to start doing this recipe as soon as we can. So I'm gonna prioritize making rubber that way. So we're gonna need kind of all of the things that we always have to make. Tin rotor is going to be an interesting one because this gets us a bunch of our like first weird stuff that needs a lathe. Couple of tin rods and a couple of tin screws. Let's grab Let's just grab like 8 ingots for now and make 10 rods. I should probably do a stack of every kind of rod, but for now I don't want the machines to be too busy. And everything else this needs. All right, there's the small chemical reactor. And then next to that, I want to put a fluid solidifier, which is going to need a couple of these LV pumps, which are going to need, oh boy, more tin rotors, and also rubber rings, which are also pretty expensive right now. Once we get the fluid solidifier, we can start to make these a lot more cheaply as well. But unfortunately, we need them for the first fluid solidifier. All right, 2 motors, check. 2 pumps, check. And that's an achievement. And fluid solidifier. Excellent. So the way I want to do this, let's clean some more of this stuff out of the way, I guess, but the fluid solidifier will go on top here, and then with the wrench, I can make sure that the output of the chemical reactor is set to the top, and if we turn on the fluid auto output, then when we make our molten rubber, it'll get pushed right up into the fluid solidifier. And we take our plate mold, and there we go. It'll go ahead and make all of the rubber sheets we could possibly want. But we are out of time for today, so that'll have to wait for the next episode. Next week, we will revisit rubber with the chemical reactor and try to finish up our sort of LV workshop over here. I also want to take the time before we dive into the Twilight Forest to start looking at things we've been skipping. So we still have to do like storage drawer upgrades, so I don't have half a dozen drawers full of cobblestone. We still haven't looked at making a bee scoop yet to collect all the hives that I have scattered around the base, and I'm sure I can find some other small things that need to be done. So next week is going to be that sort of grab bag of cleanups, and then hopefully the week after that, we can dive into the Twilight Forest for the first time. So if you have enjoyed this, be sure to leave a like and consider subscribing if you are looking forward to those next episodes. Thanks very much for watching, and I will see you next time.